All right, we have a special guest with us today. He is a true citizen of the world. He's got personal headquarters in the US, Portugal, and Japan. And he's been one of the most consistently electrifying surfers on tour since he qualified at the age of 18 back in 2016. Over the past decade of elite level performance, he's gone back to back with wins at the US Open. He's claimed a CT victory at the Corona Bali Protected and has challenged for a world title at the WSL Finals. In 2020 and 2021, he was one of the faces of the Tokyo Olympic Games, ultimately finishing with a silver medal in surfing's inaugural Olympic foray. As of recording, we are almost 7 full events into the 2025 WSL Championship Tour season, and this young man is currently on a heater. He is ranked 4th in the world. We have the one and only Kanoa Igarashi. Kanoa, thank you so much for coming on the lineup, and yeah, man, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Good to be back. Thanks for the nice intro. It's nice to be back speaking with you, and it's nice play day here in Margaret River. It was the box was firing yesterday, so it's pretty cool to be out there and do that. I didn't come out of a few of my barrels, and that's kind of what we're dealing with sometimes. It's just like you're a few inches away from getting a big score, and then instead I was just rolling around on the reef. So, but still epic. Yeah, West is best. And now I'm just kind of waiting around and seeing what the next plan is before Trestles.
Nice. Yeah. No, when this opportunity to bring you back on the pod came up, I was like, I feel like I talk to him all the time because we see each other, we catch up, and I'm like, oh, we haven't done an episode for a few years now. So I was excited to do the catch up episode. And yeah, you mentioned it, we're recording, it's a lay day during the Western Australian Margaret River Pro. Probably when this episode comes out, the event will likely be finished. But as you mentioned, round of 16 yesterday, we ran at the box. We hadn't done that in a few years. And, man, as they say at the box, it's kind of 2s or 10s, and I'm pretty sure that first wave you paddled into was probably the biggest wave we saw all day, and it was, as you said, it's just you're millimeters from coming out of that thing. But how much time had you spent out at that wave just over the years coming to Western Australia?
Over the years, it's been one of those waves where I only surf it after I lost in the contest. I'd always the contest would go by, and then I would just go out there and get a few waves. And it was just kind of like sort of like a treat almost. And
Right.
I mean, not a treat because, I mean, I would lose and be like, all right, well, I'm just gonna go blow some steam off over at the box. But I've probably had like a handful of sessions out there. I have one really memorable one when I was, a bit younger, probably like 19, first couple of years on tour. And I had a really special wave out there once, and that kind of always ingrained in my memory, like just seeing how round the barrel was. And yesterday when I got my first wave, it kind of reminded me of that wave. I saw
Mm.
all the ridges, but then it's kind of like this controlled chaos out there. And so when I was in the barrel, it just felt like there was a lot of chaos around me, but I had my line, and I was kind of, I can feel that I had control. And
Mm.
then as soon as you kind of like feel a little bit confident, I feel like the box just goes like, no, like I have
Right.
control
Right.
here. And so yeah, like the bottom dropped out from under me, and it got pretty violent. But it's yeah, it was cool. It was cool just to get that vision, and to be getting anytime you're getting barreled in a heat, it's pretty cool.
Right. It's such a unique wave, those first few times that you paddled out there, like were you able to kind of draw on any experiences at any other waves where you're like, okay, like it's a little bit like this wave or that wave, or what were those first sessions like out there for you?
Yeah, it's just like HB.
Right. Yeah. Tell your friends. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like Huntington Northside.
Right.
No, but I mean, nothing really. I mean, it's just such a unique wave. It's really hard to kind of find any comparables, and you
Mm.
think of kind of backdoor and stuff, but it's different. Like backdoor is a much longer running barrel, where this is kind of like it's a pretty short, intense barrel. So it was, it's so unique how I was just thinking about it. I was talking to Snake about it yesterday, but
Mm.
you have two, waves that they couldn't be further apart, like in terms of like the type of wave from main break to the box. They're like two different waves that you can't ride the same board. You can't have the same strategy.
Right.
It's like the only thing that'd make it even more different was if it was a left. But besides that, everything's complete opposite. So it was when you start hearing the rumors and stuff, you start shifting your kind of like your strategy, and like I started looking at my boards a little bit differently.
Mm,
I had in my room, I had kind of like my main break pile of boards, and I had like my three or four kind of box slab boards. So that's kind of like you have to have completely different boards to adapt to those conditions.
What's the key difference in like a main break board versus a box board? Assuming they're like the same height, like what are the things that stand out for you when you pick a board to ride it out at the box?
The thing is, I mean, for Margaret's, it's main break. It's so high performance.
Mm,
You're looking at a board. I mean, speaking for me, I feel like everyone's gonna speak in their own language. I feel like in this, but for me, it's like, okay, let's get like more pinnier tails, narrower tails. Let's put smaller fins in because we're riding bigger boards. Let's thin the tail out because you want to have all the sensitivity while you have the length. Because you basically, for me, I want to ride as long of a board that I can to get the drive and the paddle while
mm,
maintaining as much maneuverability as I can. So it's like finding that drive, but then doing everything like fins to thinner tails
right.
to get that like kind of feel and that control. Um, and then it's like the rails are different. Like for Margaret's this year, we made like really like rounded rails. Me and Jason were going back and forth a lot about it, and um, just have a board where it rolls over really
Mm,
easily because there's so much bump and chop. You want something that just kind of like blends in and something that kind of like, you know, cuts through the chop in like a nice forgiving way. I mean,
hmm.
I'm getting super technical now,
No,
but
no,
that
no.
was
This
just
is
kind
good. This is
that
great. No, this is
that
masterclass.
was
Keep
the
going. Yeah.
that was kind of the talk that we had with Jason, and then it was like, okay, the bottom contours, putting a V in it, making it so it's just like nothing is sticky. You don't want anything sticky out there. You want everything to just be like a nice, smooth, rounded, forgiving. And so that was like the idea of the boards we made for Margaret's main break. And
Hmm.
then for the box, it's just like you need something that's gonna get you into the wave. That's all it is. And then you hold your line. I mean, I could have rode um any of the boys that were in the locker and probably got a similar result. Whether it was good or bad, because you know, as long as you're on the wave, you sort of dictate where you take off from, and you sort of dictate where like what line you set.
Mm,
And then barrels is always one of those things. It's like even that pipeline and stuff. It's like the boards aren't as technical when you're getting when you're dealing with barrel boards, because you just want something that's going to get you into the wave and hold on. And but then main break is more performance, so you're using rail more, you're using fins more. So the box is a lot more simplified, but at the same
mm,
time, like I he made me board specific that are just thicker and just thicker boards, more volume. I had an extra my 6'2" main brake board had around 31 liters, and my board for the box had like 31.7, I think. So it almost had an extra liter more. That just makes that difference in that initial sort of glide into the wave.
right. Right. No, that's super interesting to hear you break it down that way. And I want to get to Jason and JS. We'll get to that in a minute. But equal ninth at Margaret River, as we said, you've been on a heater this year, fourth in the world right now. I'm curious. When you kind of entered the 2025 season, did anything feel different? Let's put the boards off to the side for a sec, but like, did anything feel different for you, like goal setting or your program entering the year? Because you've had such a good run, a ninth at Pipe, a fifth at Surf Abu Dhabi, another ninth in Paniche. Punta Rocco was a little bit of a low point, 17th, a second at Bells Beach, a third at Burley Heads, and a ninth at Margaret River. And on top of that, you've won every single opening round heat you've had as well, and not just advancing but winning the heat, which probably bodes well for next year when that becomes an elimination round heat. But I'm just curious as to what your mindset was like heading into 2025, and if there's anything kind of majorly different that you've stood up for yourself.
Um, like when you ask that question, like there's so many things that come to mind.
Mm,
Um, and like so, like I have a different opinion on it every day. Like I think I look at myself and go like, okay, did I do something different this year? Do I have a
mm,
different mentality? But the more like confident I feel this year and the better results that I get this year, I feel like my last couple of years have been sort of a lead up to this.
Mm.
Um, I feel like I got to a point a few years ago. It was after I got the top five. I made it to the
Yep.
top five at lowers. Um, and in that final event, I was like, okay, like I'm here. I feel like I deserve to be here in the top five. But I felt like a few things went my way, and I didn't feel like I was dominating. Like I felt like I was,
Mm.
I had some good heats, and I had things some things go my way, and then I had like a magic board, and like a few things sort of like went my way, and and it just felt a little bit like unnatural. Where I guess what I'm trying to
Mm.
say is like I wanted to feel like I was dominating. I wanted to feel like I deserved every result.
Mm.
Um, I made the top five, and I don't think I didn't win an event that year. I'm like like if you're fighting for a world title, I'm like I want to be winning multiple events
Mm.
and then making the top five. And so that was kind of my theory. And so I was like, okay, I have to really change something up. And so my last 2 years, I just felt like I was kind of changing and chopping. I was trying new things. I was trying um, different strategies. Different ways of preparation, different ways of training, and I felt like I was kind of in an experimental phase of my career, just so I can see.
Mm.
Because I told myself, I'm like, hey, my world title years are going to be in my late 20s into my early
Mm.
30s. So like at this trajectory, I'm like, I want to make sure I go into my prime years like completely like ready.
Mm.
And so I felt like, during the off season and into the season, I was trying so many different things that like I didn't have a real set sort of program. And now, like this year, I feel like okay, I have all the pieces of the puzzle that I need, and all the lessons that I learned the last couple of years. I feel like I finally kind of putting it together, and I kind of created this package for myself. And I'm like, okay, it's working. Like now, I'm like, okay, like let's go for a title because I feel like I have this package that I created the last few years with unsuccessful results and some tricky times that I'm like, all right, like now I know what I need, and I feel like I'm kind of going into this sort of stage in my career where I'm ready to sort of take on a world title.
It's really interesting to hear you break that down. Like, even when you're talking about that 2022 year where you made the WSL finals, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds a little bit like imposter syndrome, the way you're describing it, where it's like, well, I haven't actually won an event. Things have broken my way this year. And I mean, I think everyone from the outside's like, this guy's been a title contender for years. But I'm wondering if this newfound confidence after these couple of years of experimentation for you, do you see that as like a leveling up thing, or is it something that maybe you had and then you lost, or is it you've just been building like throughout the last several years?
Like like in my opinion, I look at I sort of like I almost forget. I sort of always erase like the my prior years.
Mm.
I forget that this is like my eighth or ninth year on tour. It's crazy to think that. Um, and I just and sometimes because even at the time there's always things I really needed. I felt like I really needed to work on. Um, like I just remember thinking that year I got the top five. I was so I had no confidence on my carves.
Mm.
And carves is something that you need at every single tour stop, basically. You need to have a really strong carve. And I didn't want to carve. I just said, like I just don't have the technique. I don't have the confidence to do a carve where I feel really comfortable with. And so I'm like, how am I gonna go at a world title when I have multiple things that I'm not comfortable with on a that I need to use in my arsenal?
Mm.
And I was, my consistency, I wasn't confident with my strategy. I, I mean, we're also talking, we're talking about 1% things, but I was like, hey,
Sure.
like, I'm going into an event going, okay, like I have some weaknesses, I have some chinks in my armor. And until I felt like I was able to iron out those little things, I just didn't feel like I was deserving in a deserving position to go for a title. So I felt
Mm.
like in the last couple of years, I used those years to work on, my weaknesses that, whether it was in heavier surf, whether it was in
Mm.
my carve, whether it was in my equipment. all these things that I wrote down in my notes and go, hey, I need to work on this. I need to work on this. Um, I worked on it throughout the year, because I needed more than a few months in the off season. I needed, a year or two to really work on these things.
It's super interesting to hear you give us that kind of insight too. And I'd imagine too, it's like, as you said, with experimentation, like progress isn't a straight line. Like sometimes you go down a cul-de-sac of experimentation, go, oh yeah, I learned something, but that didn't really work. We'll try something else. And I think the other thing I'm hearing too is just that humility you have in the own self-assessment, like that is a characteristic of world champions since time immemorial. Like, Mick Fanning's very like famous for saying, I qualified and there was all this hype behind me, but I was not a complete surfer in my rookie year. Like I had to build these different pieces of my surfing, and, you use a particular weapon you have to give you time and space to develop these other weapons, which is, it sounds like what you've been doing. You mentioned working with Jason Stevenson of JS Industries earlier, and big deal, our mutual friend Mitch Salazar and I, we go through the Vissla CT Shaper rankings whenever we're on, and JS has been one of those programs that we've kept our eye on, is like, hey, they're gonna, over the last couple of years, because like they've got such great equipment, they have such a monster team, they're going to make a run at some point. And I feel like with you and surfboards, you've always been a huge impact player. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that about every CT surfer. Like they all are amazing, but like people really take notice with the equipment you're on and how you're performing. You were famously with Channel Islands for a number of years. You're one of their top team riders. And then you switched to Sharp Eye. That was about 7 years ago. I remember the big debut at J-Bay, and everyone's like, holy crap, look how well he's surfing. And then again, in February this year, you announced the switch to Jason Stevenson. So I'm curious, when you think about surfboards, and you've already broken down like the insights and the discussions with Jason, but give us some more background on the move and the switch this season. What motivated it, and how have you found the program so far?
Man, yeah, that's like one of the, I love talking about this. I mean, as a surfer, like, man, surfboards is everything to us. Like surfboards is our car, it's our vehicle, it's our, for a golfer, it's the golf clubs, it's everything. You look at it every morning and you're proud of it, and you get excited, and and I've touched a surfboard every single day of my life since maybe I was 8 years old.
Right.
So, if you think about it that way, like, that's 365 days a year that I'm touching a surfboard every year for almost 20 years. Um, and, like, I don't know, I think it's the Japanese side of me as well. I feel like I have this sort of attention to detail that surfboards, I guess, kind of need. And, and it's just like, I really break down every single board. And when I'm surfing, I really love to feel certain things, and I love to really I can feel, the fins, I can feel the rails on the boards, I can feel the blank, I can feel the glassing, and I feel like that's one of my sort of things that I grew up with, that I was really lucky to kind of grow up with. Even before Channel Islands, I was working with Mark Pesh. He's a local shaper from Huntington. Roberts Surfboards up in Ventura. Um, and they've always been really open to, bringing me into the bay and showing me the process, and that always sort of, I guess, fed the inner child in me and my brain to kind of develop that sort of respect and the connection with surfboards. And so, like when I changed over to Sharp Eye from Channel Islands, it was like, everyone was like, "Well, you're going from the biggest surfboard manufacturer in the world to Sharp Eye, which is like in full underdog."
Mm,
But in my head, I was like, "Hey, I'm at this point, I'm just following like what my surfer instinct is telling me to do." And at the end of the day, I mean, if you're talking about JS, Sharp Eye, Channel Islands, Mayhem, like you're talking about the best surfboards in the world. Like these guys, like, I can the top guys on the tour, they can jump on any of these surfboards and do the best surfing of their life. So
right.
we're talking about like little nuances, and when I went over to Sharp, I was like, okay, like this is a cool feeling. It was more of like a neurological thing, I think. It was something in my head. I just loved seeing a different logo on my board,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it was a different feeling. And I was over in J Bay, and I'm like, okay, like, let's just do something different. And it was more of this excitement feeling that I think that really fueled it. And
Mhm.
then obviously working closely with Marcio, we got to do so many cool things on design, and it really kind of like it just made it really exciting for me at that time in my career. And then now with JS, it's just the same thing. It's like it kind of sparked this new sort of excitement in my surfing. And, being able to go back and forth with him, we talked about, his designs with Parco back in 2008 that he won the Bells contest on. And then we're bringing that file back, and I used it at Bells. And that was the same file that he won in 2008 or whatever it was. I made the finals in Bells. And like it's just, it's my inner surf geek is what is kind of fueled when I made that switch to JS, and it's been really exciting. Like every day has been so good. I just had a coffee with him this morning, and we were just going over designs for Trestles, and just I guess it's just that constant curiosity with surfboards is what gets me going.
It's a good one too. And I mean, we talked about the team. It's a monster team, and I'm gonna read them out just to give Jason and Sam Zubovich and the crew over there some credit. But you mentioned Joel Parkinson, Mark Occhilupo, Julian Wilson, Ryan Callanan, now yourself, Kanoa Igarashi. They got Connor Coffin, Mikey Wright, the Pupo brothers, Samuel and Miguel. They've got Jai Glindelman, Dingo Morrison. They got DJ Paul Fisher, Jeremy Flores, Ace Buchan, Luke Egan, Dusty Payne, Ramsey Bakaya, Marco Mino, Frederica Marias, Cowley Vost. I'm going to run out of breath here, but it goes
Wow.
on and on and on. And even someone like, Jordy Smith's getting a batch every now and then from JS. Like, he just seems to be on a huge heater this year, and I think that you're just such a critical part of it. It must be awesome not only to be working with JS, but just to be in the mix with those other team riders, because in a lot of ways those sometimes seem like the closest relationships on tour, because you guys are in the same basically construction stable in a way, and you're comparing templates and stuff like that.
Man, it's wild. Like, so I was just one of my talks this morning. He was just saying he made because I was just saying like, oh, talking about the Trestles boards and whatever. And then I was like, oh, how all the boys coming in town for because obviously, he's been shaping a bunch of these CT boards for the last few weeks because we
Right.
had this huge Australian leg that he was just so focused on. And then I was just making fun of him, going, "Wow! All of a sudden, you have to take your CT hat off and make all these boards for the Challenger guys because that's the next event next week."
Right.
And he was like, "Mate," and he was like, "I just made 120 boards in 8 days." I was like, "Wait, like 120 boards in 8 days is like it seems nearly like inhuman." But he was just like, and he was, and then we got into this rabbit hole about talking about designs for Newcastle, and
Right.
that just goes to show how much he loves it, and that's how deep the team goes as well. Like if you think about like an NBA team, like you have all these sort of college players basically are the guys that are in the challengers that are
Right.
like gonna make their debut in the CT like any day now. This year there could be an extra four guys on tractors for next year that qualify and
Right.
and so forth. So, he knows that he has a really young team actually because compared to all the other teams, I feel like there's a lot of guys on the challengers, and now it's sort of starting to like you know grow into the CT. So he's just, he's super involved. We have a really good time speaking about designs. We had a really cool team day on the Gold Coast a few weeks ago, where we were all down at the beach talking about design. We had guys from Aki all the way down to the junior kids, and everyone was speaking surfboards, and it was just like a cool environment. It's really cool to be a part of like a family like that, and they've been a huge support in my year so far.
Man, that would give me a little bit of pause if he's like, I've done 108 boards in the last few weeks. I'm like, that sounds like a lot, but I've got Trestles and Sakuraba and J-Bay and Tahiti coming up. Like, I put my order in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sounds cool. But how about my boards?
Yeah. Good luck
Yeah,
to them, but I'm in the title
yeah, yeah,
hunt here. Oh,
yeah, yeah,
that's fun,
yeah.
man. I like it. Okay, we're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll talk to Kanoa Igarashi even more. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm here with Kanoa Igarashi. Kanoa, we were talking about the last time you were on was 2020. I know you and I talked quite a lot, but last time you came on the podcast was 2020. And you've had quite a run since then. You 8th in the world in 2021, 5th in the world 2022. We talked about 23, 24, 14th and 17th, and now you're back up. You're 4th in the world in 2025. In the midst of all that, you not only competed for Japan in the Tokyo Olympic Games, the first time surfing was ever in the Olympics, but because it was in Japan, you were like one of the faces of the games, like globally. And because of COVID, it wasn't just a one-year thing. It was kind of a rolling couple of years. Can you talk to us just a little bit about that experience and just how different was it from kind of your surfing trajectory up until that point?
Yeah, it was crazy. What Olympics have done for surfing? It's pretty cool. It's a really unique, wild time to be a surfer and to be a professional surfer. To see the growth of the sport so like in firsthand. It's been a pretty cool experience, and I feel super proud to be a part of that sort of movement in this era that we're in. But yeah, the things that I felt during the Olympics were like unexplainable, and in each one, obviously Tokyo and in Paris, like the emotions that you feel and the lead up and the pressure and the highs and the lows is like, man, it's like so hard to describe that, like it's so intense and aggressive. Um, I remember like the whole lead up to the Olympics was the one in Tokyo was so big, having it be the first time for surfing, having it being in Tokyo, me being the only Japanese surfer on tour at the time. They're like I just remember like seeing stuff on the news, and every time I did like any sort of media hit over there, and they were kind of like, what happens if you don't win? It was almost like this, like obviously you're gonna win it if you don't win, or like what if you don't get a medal? And I was
Yeah,
just like,
surfers don't win all the time. What are you talking about?
and, and I swear that was something that I was trying to like explain. It was just like, hey, like I could totally lose here, and they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, and I'm like, hey, like that's just not how surfing works, Like I think in a lot of other sports, like I was talking to one of my friend Noah Lyles and stuff. He's a track runner,
Mm,
and they already know like, hey, if they feel 100% that day, if they have their certain breakfast, if they get their certain hours of sleep, they know what they're gonna run,
mm,
and they know they're gonna get a medal no matter
mm.
what, unless they get injured, unless they're um, there's some crazy altering the conditions or whatever. Like basically, it's like you can sort of like forecast like, okay, he's definitely gonna get a medal. He probably has a 77% chance of getting a gold, and it's kind of like it never really changes that much. But in surfing, it's like there's so many variables. Like it's not like a normal sport where the favorites always win or vice versa. It's just but it was really cool, like that whole experience, getting a medal, getting silver medal was, it felt very successful. It really changed my life in a positive way. And just getting that sort of being able to, I guess, for me, my biggest trophy was like being able to overcome this kind of pressure that I had. Had so much pressure built up, the expectations and, I guess the want. I almost felt like I didn't even want the medal at that point. I felt like I needed it, and it got kind of weird for a little bit. Like I just felt like I was pretty scared, leading up into
Mm.
it. But then when it was over and I had the medal in my hand, it was kind of a relief.
Right.
And I just kind of like I went on such a down. I remember just I was so tired, and it took me like 6 months to kind of like
Mm.
get back into the swing of things. Like, and people don't talk about that stuff with the Olympics. Is like you go so high up, and then all of a sudden you go into this down, and they call it kind of like the Olympic hangover.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of other athletes that kind of went through the same thing, and I swear I didn't want to surf for like 2 months after. I started not eating breakfast and not really eating lunch. I was just kind of having dinner every day, and it was like actually went through a really weird phase. Um, but then it's funny, so you kind of like snap out of it, and then it's like, all
Mm.
right, like we're getting ready for Paris. you know, and all of a sudden I was getting ready
Right.
for Paris, and obviously, you know, with the whole qualifications and everything, and then we're back at it, you know, and same thing in Paris. Obviously, I didn't get the same sort of success that I had in Tokyo, but same thing, you still have that lead up and the hype and just the expectations, and you know, it's like it's there's so much momentum and so much like energy, and then when it's over, it's like, oh, like yeah, like let me take a breather from this thing. Although it's such a positive thing, there's still like, you know, two sides of the coin always.
Right. The Noah Lyles point you made, such a good one. It no pun intended. It tracks with something I talk about quite a bit on this podcast, which is you pointed it out. Like surfing probably has the most dynamic field of play in all of sports, right? And so you could be the fastest, strongest, have the best equipment, and it's like sometimes it's just not your day. And you compare that to a track, or you compare that to like a swimming pool or a basketball court or any of these kind of static fields of play. I feel like if you're an elite competitor in those other sports, the swagger is a lot higher because you're like, well, I know I'm the best. Whereas in surfing, you don't see that a lot. Like the ocean is so humbling in a lot of ways, you know, like kind of the Tom Curran world champion model is like the one that I think a lot of us look to, where it's like he just went out and let his surfing do the talking, but otherwise wasn't a real flashy guy and was pretty quiet about it. And the Olympics, as you pointed out, it's such a huge platform with such a big spotlight, and the expectation is, hey, if you're representing your country, you're here to win, you know. And
Hmm.
I think you articulated that so well, and I wonder too, like with you in particular, like you were. I mean, you were famous before the Olympics. The Olympics, you are now like globally famous on this mega level. How do you just like as an individual, how do you deal with the fame part of it? Because I don't think that's something that a lot of surfers have encountered, and if they have, they try to kind of avoid it sometimes.
Um, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, you know, I'm super thankful for, you know, the recognition that the Olympics have given me, and WSL, and just having that platform to kind of express myself. And you know, like in Japan, it's really cool. Like I've had some really cool opportunities and really cool sponsorships over the years, and experiences that I've had thanks to surfing, and just like the yeah, the I guess opportunity surfing's given me. Um yeah, I guess in saying that, like I just, you know, I kind of always remind myself like that surfing is the one that kind of gave me all this.
Hmm.
And I've never been the type of guy where, you know, I'm looking for fame or chasing fame or anything like that. I just, you know, I just do what I do, and you know, through surfing, you know, I've got to, you know, meet some really cool people. I've gotten to go to some pretty cool events, um, and just be in positions where I feel like without surfing I would have never been in. So yeah, it's crazy to think, you know, like year after year, surfing is growing, and the more surfing grows, the more us surfers grow as well. You know, we're kind of this by default, we're sort of this, you know, we're the, you know, we're getting like the positive sort of aftermath of surfing becoming so popular. But it's crazy. Yeah, it's one of the things that I pinch myself sometimes for sure.
You know, you mentioned sponsorship, and you are one of the very rare sort of wunderkinds that came up very early and was in the limelight really early. And it's funny because I often think of that Quiksilver Young Guns program, and I'm like, man, they keep popping up. Obviously you were part of it, but like, you know, Mikey Wright and Julian Wilson and Jack Robinson, and it is interesting if you think of that period of time. And I think, you know, credit to Bob McKnight and Stephen Bell and everyone over there, they really identified, you know, a few of you early on, and gave you all these tools, and you know, the success kind of speaks for itself. But you know, your relationship with surfing as a job, with surfing and having sponsors, like when did that start for you? How young were you?
Um, it started really young, you know, and
Mm.
which was a good thing. For me, like I felt like the fact that sort of, you know, surfing was a kind of a job. You know, actually, you mentioned it just before. Stephen Bell was also a huge part of kind of planting that seed in my head.
Mm.
from simple things like, I mean, I signed with Quiksilver when I was 12, 13. I was 12. And then all of a sudden I was at all these CT events when I was 13, 14. Stephen Belly, he would always take me to all these events, and I'd stay with the surfers. And then all of a sudden, the surfers are getting dragged into these signings and photo
Mm.
shoots. And, and I just remember all the surfers just be like, oh, another photo shoot, another signing. What, we have to do the shoot. Wait, I want to go home. The contest just finished. And like, no, 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 you're going to go to, Tahiti now to do this board trip shoot. And all the surfers would be complaining. And I'd just kind of be like looking around, just going like, oh, this, like, really? Why don't you want to go to Tahiti? Or like, wait, why don't you want to go to this signing? This is pretty cool. And, Belly would always just, kind of chirp in my ear and go, like, this is their job part. Like, this is, being
Mm.
in the water with a jersey on, that's the easy part. But like, and he explained to me how, hey, a company like Quiksilver, they're paying you money, but that's coming out of the marketing budget. And when you do these signings, it leads to recognition in that city, and
Mm.
someone's going to buy a Quicksilver t-shirt the day after, and that's going to lead to money back into Quicksilver's pockets. So that's how marketing works. And I mean, I was 13 years old and just like, whoa, that's what marketing means, And he kind of gave me this sort of life school, and explaining to me how marketing works and how where the money that came from. Bob McKnight, also you mentioned, he was a huge part of that as well. He explained to me because I would just be like, these companies like Quicksilver are just burning through money doing trips um, to G-Land and sending kids like me, Leo, and Jack to Australia to do what? To eat acai every day and run around. But there was there's so much of a science to it. It all makes sense now, but at the time I didn't understand. And those guys were sort of always kind of preparing me and helping me understand what surfing as a job looked like. Not only being in the ocean with your friends and having fun. So it was cool. Like that they sort of, steered me in a way where now I look at it like, hey, like surfing is a job, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's, I mean, I couldn't imagine having any other job. So it's, I know how to kind of, I guess, navigate that, I think, better than other people just because I was introduced to it so early.
It makes sense, and the surf industry's gone through so many changes, and it's always probably had that tension, right, where it's like the surfers themselves, as a community, fancy themselves as like, anti-establishment, non-conformist, and when these brands get big, they're like, oh, this brand's too big, etc. But I was talking to Pat O'Connell the other day, and we were kind of just like giggling a little bit at the situation, because it's like, all these people that don't want the brands to get super big, like they're the same ones that loved A View from a Blue Moon, that the John film. He goes, that cost us $2 million. Like, we're not making that if Nike doesn't own us. And it's like, they all love, the Dane Reynolds, like, Indo parts. It's like, Quicksilver is not sending him to the Indies Trader 4, like, a dozen times to get those video. It's like there's always going to be a balance. I think for someone like you that has been a professional and has kind of ridden the wave, so to speak, of the industry going up and down in the surfing world, you've also have a number of partners outside the surfing world. And I'm curious if you've noticed like any difference just in how they operate, or is it all business to you?
Oh, I mean, like we forget that, like, brands like Quicksilver and they're I mean, I guess for me the best example is a brand like Quicksilver. They're so lenient, they're so um friendly. And
Mm.
so I guess on a like they're on surfers time a little bit, where it's like kind of, it's a little bit more lenient. I feel like it's not as strict. But then, I'll have my deals outside of the surf industry, and it's like, hey, like it's 4 p.m. It's 4 p.m. Like
Right.
you're a minute late, like we might cut your contract up. It's like, oh, like, okay, like that's different. Like I rocked up to a Quicksilver signing, 7 minutes late, and it's like, oh yeah, like it's kind of when everyone else rocked up, you know.
I don't want to
And
be
so
first. Yeah. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so this, there's that sort of, it's a little bit different, but I mean, it's really good though. It's like it's professionalized me as well. Like I need to, I haven't had strict times since high school. I mean,
Right.
high school, I had my strict times of having to be in class at certain times, and I got not a certain got had to get to another class, and I had 30 seconds or 2 minutes in between, whatever it was. Um, and so like when you kind of like go away from classes and school, I sort of like lost track of time a little bit.
Hmm.
And these brands, when I do these shoots and these obligations, it reminds me of back when I was younger in school, and it's more like, hey, like, you know, a meeting's a meeting, a set time's a set time. Like let's stick to that. And yeah, it's pretty funny. Like it's different ways of working with certain brands.
For sure. And I mean, I think there's still that resistance out in the surfing community, but I think the way you've navigated it is like people just have nothing but respect for your surfing, and you have partners kind of in the surfing world, outside of the surfing world. And, one of those partners is Neutrogena. They're supporting this episode. And, surfers were out in the sun every day. And so something like sunscreen, it's not just a product we use, it's part of the lifestyle. And, choosing the right sunscreen, it not only has to feel good, but kind of protect us every time. And that's critical. And, you recently signed with Neutrogena. You're their first surf brand ambassador, alongside world champion and fellow Olympian Caroline Marks. Talk to us about that partnership in particular. How did it come about, and what's been your experience with Neutrogena so far?
Yeah, I mean, first off, shout out to Beach Defense, Neutrogena Beach Defense. It's like it's such a huge important part of our daily lives. Like people forget, I mean, I guess when you think about surfing, you're thinking about, okay, surfboard. You're thinking about your leash. You're thinking about, people are asking, what wax we use, about what pad we use on the surfboard. But those are obviously essentials that you see, that you can clearly see while we're in the water, but people don't realize that all surfers are using sunscreen. And just because it's invisible and you just don't see it on everyone's face, it doesn't have a big, logo on your face when you put sunscreen on. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that we don't have it on. And it's such a big essential for me. I think it's so important to protect our skin. Whether I'm competing, whether I'm paddling out with my friends on an off day, a lay day, or whether, I'm doing a training session outdoors, I feel like it's a necessity. And luckily I have a great brand like Neutrogena that it's truly sunscreen that I love to wear, and it's makes life a lot easier. It's one step that I don't have to think about.
I think your point's right. Like if people can't notice you wearing it, that's part of the appeal, right? Like, and you're right. That beach defense stuff's awesome. They sent me a few things. I got the stick, I got the spray, I got the lotion. Took it to Australia a couple weeks ago. Used it today. It's really really great stuff. You mentioned earlier that you not a day has gone by probably for the last 25 years that you haven't touched a surfboard. Now, this is a little bit like going to the dentist and ask if you floss all the time, but my guess is that you've had a few sessions where you haven't had sunscreen on. Give us one of those stories. What's that been like for you?
Man, I mean, it's funny when you're so used to wearing sunscreen, you realize a day that you do forget to put sunscreen on, it's like you get tortured. It's like, it's like the sun gods are just they come and torture you, and I can hear my mom's voice in the back constantly just going like, I told you to bring sunscreen. I told you to put sunscreen on. And I had so many episodes like that when I was younger, because obviously when you're young and you're a little bit less mature, I'd rock up to a day at Trestles, and I just scramble, and I forget to put my wax on and forget to put sunscreen on. I just want to get in the water, and I'd get home and I just get so scolded by my mom. Um, Luckily, thankfully, now that I'm older, I'm a little bit more mature and a little bit more, you know, um, I can take breaths when the waves are good, and I'll slowly put my wax on. I'll remember to put my sunscreen on, and I don't have that sort of struggle anymore. Um, it's I mean, thankfully I matured, because I think my skin would be screaming right now if I was still that 12-year-old running out in the water at Trussels without any sunscreen on.
All right, let's walk us through your routine. I want to get the specifics here. So in a week or two, you're home. You drive to Huntington Beach Pier. It looks exactly like the box. What's your routine? Do you like? Oh, and okay. I'll one more detail. Short arm full suit. That's what you're wearing. So the forearms are exposed. The head's exposed. I want to get your tips because I think every surfer has their own thing where it's like my wetsuit goes on and then I put the thing on, or I put it on at home and then I wax up. So what is it? When does the sunscreen go on for you? At what step?
Normally it normally depends. I have two different I have two different surfers inside me. I have like the
Like
one
two
side of
wolves.
me, yeah, like I have two Kanoa Igarashi surfers inside. Maybe one's like the Japanese one, one's the American ones. Um, but I have one that's kind of like I get everything ready at home, where I'll do my warm up at home. Um, I'll wax my board up at home.
Mm.
I'll even put my wetsuit on at home and put my sunscreen on at home. And then I kind of put everything in a backpack, like my clothes and stuff, and then go surf. And so when I get, because I have days where I'm just like, I just don't want to like get ready while I'm there. Like I want to arrive, park my car, and go straight out. And so I'll have that side of me on some days, and then I'll have other days where I'm just kind of like throw everything on in the car, throw everything into the car, and then when I'm in the parking lot at Huntington, I'm just kind of like there with my friends, and I take 45 minutes to even get my suit on. I'm really slow, like lazy. I mean, normally at Huntington, there's nothing really to get too excited about in terms of waves. So it's slow moving. It's more of like a social surf. So I'm piling out as a social sort of kind of like a coffee in the water. But yeah, I put my suit on, and normally like it's the transition is like right before I put my wax on, I always put my sunscreen on because I always have my wax and my sunscreen together.
Yes.
And normally what happens is I put my sunscreen on and everyone around me is like, "Hey, can I use some? Can I use some?" And same thing as wax. It's one of those things where everyone knows that I'm prepared and I have, I'm the pro surfer in the parking lot, so I'll have wax, I'll have my sunscreen, and it just kind of gets shared along the parking lot. And once everyone's done, I can put my stuff away and I can finally go surf. But it's it's a funny little process. It's like my two sides of me that one is kind of like more professional, like hey, let's get things done, and the other one's kind of just kind of chill depending on the day, kind of like a Sunday canoa, I feel like.
There's a huge, it's like the days when you like wake up and make your bed and it just changes your whole day. I'm with you where it's like, I got all my
True.
stuff on at the house. I looked in the mirror. I applied the facial stick. I used the spray on my back where I couldn't reach. I put the lotion on my arms. I'm waxed. I just go straight to the beach and ready to go. So
I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of the Neutrogena Beach Defense stick because whether like I'm putting it on my arms or my legs, like I always just stick with the stick because I like the consistency. It's really like lightweight. Um, Obviously I mean having it be water and sweat resistance. Like I feel like I always have that consistent feel that I just don't like that sort of greasy feel. So the stick for me is just like it just feels clean. Like it feels like it's a part of my skin. Um, so whether I'm wearing a short arm or wearing like a short leg, um, I always get really sunburnt in my calves. So anytime I surf in board shorts, have to put sunscreen on my calves. It's like one of my main points. And but yeah, just like something about like the consistency of the stick. It just like I feel like it just bonds so well with me, and I'm able to like put it on my face and then use the um same product on my calves, and it's just kind of like a all in one for me.
it's a good breakdown. We really appreciate Neutrogena, especially the beach defense product. It is sunscreen you'll love to wear, and it is water-resistant beach protection. We're going to take one more break to get a word in from our sponsors, and when we come back, we will wrap it up with Kanoa Igarashi. All right, we are back. This is the lineup. I'm Dave Prodan here with Kanoa Igarashi. Kanoa, we talked about the heater you've been on this year, currently ranked 4th in the world. By the time this airs, the cut event will have happened. We will have CT8 lower trestles, CT9 Sakurama, CT10 Jeffreys Bay, CT11 Tehopu, and then the finals for those in the WSL Final 5, which you are currently included in, will compete for the world title at Cloudbreak at the Lexus Fiji Pro presented by Corona Cero. At this point in the season, does anything change for you across the back four events? And do the goals change? Does your preparation change? Or are you just kind of go, it's been working so far, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing?
No, I mean, every event, like, every event I'm making adjustments. Every event
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking to find that extra 1%. It's like it's like the F1. I have a few friends that race in the F1, and we're always going back and forth, and we're always talking how many adjustments they do throughout the year per race, and it actually really sort of it rang a bell to me. It sort of opened my eyes to think about how important each event is, and how I guess important each one is, and how much attention you have to give to each one as if it's its own event.
Mm-hmm.
My whole thing is like I want to give the same amount of attention to this next event at Trestles as I would for the Final Five event at Fiji, and
Sure.
I feel like each event deserves that sort of attention. Those guys in F1, like each race, they have basically a completely different car. They're just the only thing that they're really forwarding over is like their engine. But for certain tracks and for certain climates and humidity and there's so many factors, they have a specific sort of body and specific setting that they're going for into each race. And I feel like the same should go with surfing, where the waves in Margaret's are going to be completely different to what we surf in Trestles, and the waves we surf in Trestles is completely different to what we surf in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
and and so forth. Um, that like I'm already making adjustments now for Trestles, not just in the equipment, but also ways of training, ways of strategizing. I feel like it's you know you can't take the same approach you have each event at a time. I feel like if you do that, it'll probably go good for some events, but it's also going to go really bad in other events. So yeah, and saying that, like I don't have any like strict routines or anything. Um, so I can be flexible, and adjust for each event, if that makes sense. So, I you know, I'm, I'm already getting ready for Trestles, and my kind of eyes are set for that, and just want to make sure that I'm making those specific adjustments and just kind of prepping myself for that. And then the moment Trestles is over for me, it's my whole mentality will shift for Brazil, and
Mm-hmm.
each event, you kind of have to know how to close the door on each event. Like I remember I got a good result at Bell's, and I just told myself, "Hey, I'm going to completely forget about that." And as if, for me, I could have won the event or gotten lost in the first round, and I would have kind of approached the next event the exact same way. So that's kind of the way I like to look at it for this year.
It's certainly working for you. I know we were talking about before we started recording, but the moment for me, I've enjoyed watching you surf all season, but the moment for me where I'm like, oh, he's like leveled way up. First wave of the semifinals at Burley Heads against Julian Wilson, you had this little extra hop, like the roll into the barrel, and like it looked like you were really feeling it, like at that point. Not that you hadn't been all season, but that was something that really stood out for me. I don't know if I just saw it or if you kind of clocked that as well.
I mean, huge respect to you for even remembering that or even kind of like pointing that out, because it's funny, like those are little things that I feel like like a surf expert or a specialist can see, and it's like those are little like attitude things that I feel like you can see when someone's confident or when someone's kind of in the flow. And for me, like that was a huge moment for me, because obviously I wasn't thinking going, oh, I'm gonna do a little ollie down this wave. It just naturally happened because I remember I was paddling out for that heat, and Julian is like my all-time favorite surfer. Him and Taj are like, are the guys that really shaped me to be the surfer who I am. Like those are like the guys that I always watch. And so when I was out there in the water with Julian, I was fully like I was basically like starstruck. And I've already competed with him a bunch, but I don't know, there's something about that event in specific, and I was in the water, and it was just like my inner 13-year-old was just screaming, going like, "Oh, you're in the water with Julian Wilson in the semifinals!" Like, you know, hold your ground. And then I was like, hold my ground for what? Like, let's giggle and let's have some fun. And I was like, I'm just gonna be a kid. And when I caught that wave, it reminded me of like a session that I had in Huntington a long time ago when I was a kid, and hopping into the inside shore break, and I did this ollie, and it was kind of the same thing where kind of it was just me having fun. Like I just ollied down the wave, and it kind of gave me this cool sensation. But I could have easily, fell there, and instead of getting a high score on that wave, I probably would have got a 2 point ride. But there's something about that sort of little playfulness that I feel like when surfers are in that kind of sync, those are the little moments that kind of shine. But that was one of those ones where, I kind of watched it back over the day after and went like, oh, I remember I did that. That was actually pretty cool.
It was rad. It's certain surfers, they like to do the tour. They're on their own. Some of them have a pretty big pit crew. Like, what's your program this season? You got a coach? You got buddies? You got a partner traveling with you, or like what's your support crew look like event to event?
Yeah, yeah. Like for me, it's just it's I always have my filmer with me, Bernardo.
Hmm.
He's a huge help, and just I mean, obviously watching tape is huge for any sport, I think. Being able to watch my footage after every session, after every heat is a huge um, help in my kind of world. And yeah, Bernardo, he's super solid in that aspect, and just having a friend that's always consistent. I know I'm used to seeing him. We've been childhood friends, so it's really cool to always have him in my corner. And obviously, Snake. Snake is he's my coach, Jake Patterson. He's at every event with me. And then yeah, whenever my girlfriend can come to some events, she comes along. She was at a few events in Australia. It's always just, and then actually my family as well. So I guess for me, like I don't have anything like real strict, like hey, I need these people, or like I need
Right,
to
right.
create this team environment, but it's more like whatever makes sense and whoever, makes me happy. Obviously at events, you just want to feel at home. You want to feel comfortable. Um, I used to do a lot of events like on my own, and I felt very like like sort of alone, like you lose the heat, and you kind of you don't have anyone to kind of bounce back and forth with, or
Hmm.
the morning of the finals, like you don't have anyone to be excited with. So having people that obviously you love and people that you care about around you, I feel like is a huge advantage, because it's at the end of the day, you want to be surrounded by people that support you. And there's no one else that supports me more than my parents, my girlfriend, Bernardo, and my coach. So that's kind of my sort of my pit crew.
We've been working really closely with the surfers, intensely. I'd say probably more so than in the past on tour design. And, day one of the Gold Coast, we announced pretty big changes to the championship tour starting in 2026. We're going to have 12 events. We're going to be starting in April at Bell's. We're going to be finishing with the Pipe Masters in December. At the ninth event at Trestles, there'll be a field refinement, but it won't be qualification. It'll still be top 2/3. They'll go on to Abu Dhabi, then Portugal, and then the entire field will come back for the Pipe Masters. And the world title will be decided by that cumulative ranking, right? Best 9 results out of the season. And a couple of the other little points were, the top 8 after CT11 men and women, they're going to be seeded directly into the round of 16 at Pipe. And then the Pipe Masters is going to be worth 1.5 times the points of a championship tour event. And so pretty well received changes, but I'm curious, you've been on tour for a decade at this point. You've been in one system, you've been in the new system, you're about to go into a third system. What do you think of where the sport's headed in 2026?
First of all, that explanation was insane. Did you read something, or was that off the top of your head?
I've been living this design for months, man. I could probably could talk about it in my sleep at this point.
I just learned, yeah, that was cool. I actually I picked some stuff up in there. That was actually that was cool. Good to know. Um but but I guess I say that because, us as surfers, like, we're so um immersed in our current season, and our job is to be like so in the moment, like sometimes I have a hard time. Like I'd be focused on this Margaret's event now that as soon as I lost yesterday, I kind of like snap out of it and go, oh my God, what's the next event now? Like you kind of, you don't remember, and then you don't know because you're so immersed in that. And then but in saying that, like, it's so crazy to think that we're gonna have, a pretty big break to be starting the year in April next year. It's kind of scary, because it's kind of like when you have a bad season, you kind of want to go like, oh, I just want to like get another chance real quick. Like,
Right.
I want next season to come already. Like I have some, some vengeance in me. And then there's another side where it's like you have a really good year, and you're like, wow, I'm on a heater. I want to keep it rolling. Like, I want the season to start back up again. I think I just love competing so much. I love the WSL so much that, like, you just don't want to. It gives me a little bit of separation anxiety, knowing that we're not going to start back up until April. But it's so cool, Like, it's just the tour is designed in such a great way where, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, in my opinion, I think there was never ever anything broken. I think there's always ways to refine and to obviously better the experience. At the end of the day, if we're surfing the waves that we get to surf, the rest is kind of like, who cares? Like, it's
Mm.
and we're traveling the world, we're surfing the best waves in the world. We're giving our, and sometimes, Mother Nature doesn't provide the best conditions, but we're going to these locations in the best time of the year, and we're given 10 days in a waiting period. We're giving ourselves the best chance of, trying to score waves. So um I think this truly is the dream tour. No matter how you set up the tour, whether it starts in April or whether it starts in
Mm.
January, I've always just been a huge just fan of the tour. Like, I think the best surfer always wins, no matter
Mm.
what the format is. I'm a huge believer in that. It's and it has gone to show. I feel like each world champion in the last, as far as I can remember, is very deserving. So
Sure.
it's a really exciting time for surfing. I think the the idea of starting in Australia is really cool. That's always been, I feel like starting at a high performance location, there's something to it. I feel like the only thing, in my opinion, was, starting at Pipeline was great, but you kind of, there's always something about starting up at a high performance wave where you're like, you kind of see the differences, what people did in the off season, and you're
Mm.
like, oh, that guy actually looks really good. He looks, even fitter than ever. Oh, those
Right.
guys, his boards look really good. Whereas the format, the way it was, Pipeline is really hard to see. It's hard to judge what kind of adjustments someone made in the off season. Um, and so I'm really excited to get that sort of high performance feel back for the start of the year.
Yeah, no, that's a good insight for sure. I like how you said, well, with the off season being as long as it is, like if I end on a down note, I'll want to get back in right away, and if I end on a heater, I'm going to want to keep it going. It sounds like the only thing that'll make sense is if you win the world title, then you get the longest time to celebrate probably in history, just with those 6 or 7 months. So you can plan on that. I think we are kind of working on a couple things in the off season. So if you're in need, I'm sure
Okay,
we'll
cool.
find something for you to surf. But
I probably will be
it's
in
a,
need. Yeah.
it was also really interesting to hear you talk about how present you are at the events. People always talk about that, like analysts with like the world's best quarterbacks or the NFL's best quarterbacks, they have like a goldfish memory, right? Because so much is riding on every play. They're like, if the play worked, great. If it didn't work, I'll learn something, and then I immediately have to forget about it. Like if I'm thinking about the interception I just threw, I'm going to throw another one right away. Where it sounds like it's the same with you in surfing, where it's like, I don't want to be sitting out in the lineup at Main Break Margaret River thinking about my quarterfinal heat at Burley Heads, And at the same time, I don't want to be thinking about my opening round heat at Trestles. I'm here right now, which I think is a really good way to go about it.
It was kind of this sort of this advice that Kelly and also Belly gave me when I was growing up. And it was always just how it's really important to feel at home on the
Sure.
road and creating that home environment. And what that basically means, well, at least what that meant to me was like you don't want to. It's really about being really present. You know, you don't want to be
Yeah.
somewhere and feel homesick. You know, like, oh, I want to be home, or I want to be
Right.
at a warmer climate, or I want to be somewhere with better waves. Like you're so in the moment. Like you're so, you know, when you're at home, you know, for a normal person, it's like, hey, you have the cafe that you go to every day. You have your, you know, family that's down the road. You have your favorite restaurant across the street. You know, and you're very present. You know, you feel like you don't need to be anywhere else. And it's carrying that feeling, I guess, throughout the year. I think is really important. And I feel like that's why a lot of times, like they say, like, oh, you know, veterans do really good, or that's why, you know, a rookie could possibly have a harder time on tour,
Mm.
because I feel like the tour stops have been so consistent and similar along the years that you have a guy like Jordy that's been on tour, you know, longer than anyone currently on tour. It's you know, he's gonna go to an event and he knows exactly he's gonna go to his favorite restaurant on the Gold Coast that he's been going to for the last 15 years. And there's some
Right.
sort of home feeling there, you know, and he might get a house that he's been staying for the last 10 years at Bell's, you know, and there's some sort of home feeling there. So it's like that's something that I've been trying to recreate is like, you know, each event that I'm at, I want to be like, okay, cool. Like I'm so excited to be here. I get to visit my favorite restaurant here. I get to visit my friends that live here that I haven't seen in a year. Um, and it really sort of hones you and puts you in the moment. And yeah, like what I mentioned earlier is like, yeah, like you know, and the moment you touch foot at that location for that event, until the moment you lose or you win or the until the moment that the contest is over, you're so immersed in that moment that like you're not thinking about anything else, which is I think super important.
Yeah, I know it's a good point, and Jordy's a good call out. I'm gonna start telling people not to talk about how long he's been on tour because everyone's like, he's been on tour for 17 years, and I think, man, I remember like
Wow.
working at the company and like being all hyped up about his rookie season. So if they're saying that about him,
Yep.
what's that mean about me? It's a really
True.
good
True.
insight
True.
on
True.
the creating the home, though. I think, and I've heard a version of that from Kelly too. So that's interesting. You picked that up. Before you go,
Yeah.
we did reach out to our Instagram community at the Lineup Pod. We got a lot of questions requested for you. We're not going to get to all of them, but we did pick three. First one is from @trav022, who asks, between boards, training, and coaches, which one has helped you improve the most over the years? So boards, training, or
Ooh,
coaches, I guess, if you had to pick one.
that's a super good question. It's a hard question actually. I would like to answer that as 33.33% on each one.
There you go.
Um, but it's not. And I feel like to each person it's different. You know, some people, you know, I guess respond better to a good coach. Some people respond better to a good surfboard. Some people can respond better to a good training regimen. So I think for me, like throughout my career, I guess it's different throughout the stages of my career, but maybe the last couple of years, I would say my training regimen has been
Mm.
one that if I had to pick one, you know, I'm not really the type of person to like be posting, you know, my training sessions or the way you know what I'm doing in the gym or anything like that because I feel like it's just it's my thing, you know, it's my personal thing and it's something that I'm proud of, my work ethic and what I do in the gym. Um, and I have a really good team of trainers that I feel like I never really get to shout out enough. I have Ruben in Portugal. I have Paul in the States. I have the team at Red Bull in the high performance center that really helped me out as well. And just you know the guys that you know really get the best out of my physical condition for each event. So shout out to those guys. I feel like, my last few years I'm feeling stronger than ever. When I first got on tour, I think I was around, like, I mean, I'll say kilos now because I've been in Australia for so long. And
Right.
my mind's working in kilos, but I was around 67 kilos, 68.
Mm.
And then now I'm about 82 kilos.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's about, yeah, I'd say 14, I mean, over 10 kilos of just, of muscle and just training and just trying to get the best fighting weight out of my body. So yeah, I'd say training regimen has been the big one for me.
I like that answer. And I like the very professional approach to saying, look, I do it. I don't post about it. Not that we knock people that do post about it, but it's better, I think, than the folks that are like, they definitely do it, but they lie and they're like, oh, I've never been to the gym in my life. It's like, dude, you look like
Yeah.
you're about to enter a Mr. Universe contest. What are you talking about?
Hey, actually, real quick, I forgot to mention one more person that's a part of my training regimen program is Stu. Stu in Huntington. He helps me a lot as well. But just wanted to make sure
Awesome.
I'm super bad with remembering stuff. But yeah, I have a really cool. I'm very thankful for the people around me.
We just put them all on Main Street. They're all going to get inundated with requests now because they're like, I want to get the Kanoa Igarashi fitness regime going on. Second question is from oh man, Mimi Agnivald. Mimi Agnivald, apologies to that person. The question asks, how do you cope with being a Japanese national icon? How do you handle the pressure? You talked about it a little bit. It didn't seem like it bothered you too much, but it's a good question all the same.
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really cool. I mean, I guess I have a unique sort of way of dealing with it just because I don't actually live in Japan. I don't really live anywhere to be honest. Just traveling so much. You know, I don't there I don't have any instances where I just wake up and I want to go for a coffee and it's and that's become a lot harder than what it used to be, right? I don't have any stories like that because when I go to Japan, it's like I mean, I guess I take that back. There's some things I guess in Japan that I used to be able to do when I was younger. Um,
Hmm.
go to cafes and stuff in Tokyo where you feel like you can kind of blend in because there's a lot of times where I just don't like to stand out. I like to blend in and just be one other person. And nowadays there is those moments where I feel like people look at me in a different way in Japan than when I was younger. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden it's like, oh, the silver medalist, the top five surfer, and um, which is cool. I'm super thankful for it, but I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm an object more so than an actual human. That makes me a little
Hmm.
bit sad, and those are the days I don't deal with it as well. But overall, like it's cool. People say really nice things, and it kind of gives me a little pep in my step, knowing that I'm doing something positive and impacting people in the right way.
Yeah, it's interesting. You hear, and you're very humble about it, right? But you hear different celebrities talk about it, especially in the age of selfies, and like they're like, look, the same thing. They're like, I'm happy to give someone a little bit of joy, but I'd rather just have a conversation with that person, you know. And I think for most fans too, it's like if you're respectful and you go up and you just say hi, and the person is nice enough to ask you a question or two, and that little like 2 minute exchange is going to last a lot longer than whatever kind of like, okay, like I don't have anything to say to you, let's just take a photo kind of approach. But yeah, it's a good question. I'm glad we asked that one.
Yeah, it is.
um Last one that we picked is from the at Good Luck Surf podcast, who says, you've already been incredibly successful. What keeps you motivated on the championship tour 10 years in? Is it as simple as you won a world title?
Um, that's a funny one because the first thing it's we're as athletes we're so tough on ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, the part of that question was, I mean, part of the question that I picked up was that you're already so successful, but in my
Hmm.
head I feel like I haven't had any success at all. Because we're always striving for more, and that could be toxic in
Sure.
some days, that could be the perfect feel that you need on some days. It really depends on which side of the coin you look at it.
Right.
Um, I have days where I wish I did kind of give myself a little bit more props and gave myself a little bit more a bit of a pat on my back. Um, but then I do have days where I feel like, hey, like I'm glad, like there's some days where I'm going like I'm glad I didn't win that contest, or I'm glad I didn't have a successful year, because that's what's keeping me hungry and keeping me motivated. Like I really believe that everything happens for a reason, and I feel like if I did possibly, let's say I did win a world title like when I was younger, I feel like I wouldn't have the same work ethic that I have now. It's like, for me, it's almost like something's telling me that, hey, like you haven't done enough. So work harder, work harder. And then, you know, I feel like that stronger power is gonna tell me the day that, when I do win a world title, it's like, okay, you did enough. And I don't know how I'm gonna react to that moment, but at
Right.
least for now, like, yeah, like I totally, like, if I won a world title that year and made the top 5 a few years ago, I'd look at myself in the mirror and go like, "That's it, kid?" Like, like I have more to give, kind of thing. So, you know, I think for me, like that world title would mean much more than just like holding up the trophy at the end of the year. It'd be more like a of just this like kind of confirmation stamp of like, okay, that was the formula. That's what you needed to do. Those were the sacrifices that you needed to do to become a world champion. And then I'll look at myself in the mirror and go like, all right, you want to do that again? And then it'll go from there. So it's but yeah, like it's cool. Like I think that journey towards a world title is that's the most beautiful thing ever, in my opinion.
It's a great answer. And thanks to everyone that wrote in Edit the Lineup Pod. We're now down to our final section. This is the lightning round. So these are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. And just for balance, I've got your answers from 5 years ago. So we'll see how consistent you are.
Cool.
All right, first question. If you could only have one board setup for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
I would say twin fin,
Okay.
because the amount of times you're surfing bad waves is way more than when you're surfing good waves.
And some of those twin fins are so high performance these days. It's like you're not compromising a whole lot, right? I mean, look at someone like Josh Kerr.
So true.
Last time you said a quad for some reason. We were in Surf Ranch, I think. I don't know why that came up. Good
Really,
choice as
I
well.
was
I
it
like quads.
was probably it was because I think I was riding we were at the surf ranch in the trailer, and I think it was because I was riding a quad night contest and I was all
I mean,
quad
like, feels
happy.
great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Tea, good. Genmaicha. It's a Japanese roasted green tea. Nothing better.
Burrito or pizza?
Burrito. I'm from California, so Southern California, Mexico burrito, breakfast burrito. It's like our pride and joy.
Last book you read?
Last book that I read, um, well, I've been I just finished two books at the same time. One that I really liked was called Make Your Bed. Very cool.
Yes. Yeah. That's where my comment came from earlier, actually. I'm like, it's
Yeah,
like the
true.
days you make your bed. Yeah.
It's funny. I just said that, and I was like, I just heard that somewhere, and then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
reminded me that it
yeah.
was you that said that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one.
yeah.
Best surf film ever.
Oh, that's a hard. I'm actually curious. I wonder what I said 5 years ago, but I would say right now it's between two. Um, Scratching the Surface
Mm,
and Stranger Than Fiction.
both good ones. Last time you said the classic Kelly Slater Black and White.
Black and white. Oh wow, things have changed. I
Yeah,
mean, it's those are my top three.
yeah, that's fair. I'm interested to see if this is still your answer. What is one wave you never have to go back to?
One way that I never have to go back to,
Yeah.
like I'm happy about not going back to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't have to be like dancing on its grave, but you're like, or just like, I'm good. I surf there. I don't have to go back.
Actually, hmm. I mean, the thing is, I think people forget I'm from Huntington. Like, there's not much worse than that. So I'm pretty.
Right.
I'm a pretty very. I'm a simple person to please in terms of waves. But I would say, uh, it'd be somewhere in California because I don't know, something about surfing in California. You know what? Oh, the right answer is not coming to my brain, but I would say like El Porto, and that probably hurts for a lot of you guys up there up in LA. But El Porto, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever surf it, and something about it just I didn't have too much fun.
You know, we do. Our office has been in El Porto, or not El Porto. It's been in LA for the last 10 years. I'm still up in Oxnard, so I'm a little bit removed from that. But I would imagine that the surfers in El Porto would appreciate your answer. Even the really good ones are like, we get it. It's tough. It is. It
It's
is
no,
like
but
probably the most consistent wave in LA, so it's certainly serviceable, but it's tough sometimes.
it is, but that's like the thing is I can relate to that sort of the
You're right.
hate
Yeah.
because
Sure.
people speak so bad about Huntington that like people say it, and I'm just like yeah, like I totally agree with you, but I love it. But there's gonna be people. I think it doesn't suit my surfing. That's why maybe.
I mean, after people listen to this podcast, they're going to turn up to Huntington and be shocked it doesn't look like the box. So that's going to be on you.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Um,
true. Sorry, it's different. What did I
la-
say last time?
Last time you said, "What's the one wave in Brazil my rookie year?" and I said Postinho, and you went, "No, the
Oh,
backup venue," and I went, "Oh, Grumari."
oh, oh my God! It was the that. Oh, to be
That
honest,
was
that's
tough.
probably that's my answer. Actually, it was such a hard wave to surf. Man, I had a hard time that wave. I remember I was leaving the car park that day and going, "Oh my God, I hope I never have to compete here ever again."
It's a pretty beach. It was tough that day. I remember.
It
All
was
right.
such a pretty beach. Yeah, yeah.
If you only get to surf one wave for the rest of your life, what would it be? And you can dreamcast it. Perfect conditions, just your buddies out. Where would it be?
It would be in Huntington. That's the yeah. If I can surf, I can. If I were to choose one place to surf for the rest of my life, I'd say it'd be a 4 foot day at Huntington, with a little bit of onshore wind, sunny, kind of like that September feeling where it's like kind of it's got a slight onshore wind, but it's warm, it's nice. I'm on South Side, and there's like a little rip running through the pier, so it's easy to get back out. And it's doing that thing where it does in the winter, where it kind of the right runs a little bit, and then there's a fun little left ripple that goes into the pier. That's my dream. I'll surf that for the rest of my life, every day, all day.
I like it. Best person to share a lineup with?
Best person to share a lineup with. I would say, um, my dad. My dad, because he gives me every wave that comes in, and I feel bad. So it's like this kind of we're both doing this charity work. We're both like, "Hey, you go." I was like, "No, you go," and it's fun though. We're always sharing waves. So he's my favorite person to surf with.
It's a nice one. Worst person to share a lineup with?
Worst person to share a lineup with. Um, I would say my girlfriend, Havana, because she looks every wave that comes in. She looks at me like, "Are you gonna give me this wave?" And I'm just like, "Another one?" And so yeah, as much as I love her and I love serving with her, she's she's she doesn't let me surf.
Opposite experiences surfing with your dad, sounds like.
Exactly.
Last question. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by.
I will next achieve happiness by getting home and having tacos.
It's a great answer. Kanoa Igarashi, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. Congratulations on all your successes here. You've been ripping forever, and it's just awesome to see you, leveling up and feeling it and feeling playful out there. And I look forward to seeing you at Trestles in a few weeks, and safe travels home, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.